Hi there, my name is Nick Dutch, and on this YouTube channel I just make videos, and these days I make videos about whatever the heck I see fit. I've had an inquiry, so to speak, from an individual who wanted me to do a video on the subject of obsessions and getting obsessed. So it's not the word obsession in terms of spirit obsession or possession. It's obsession as in terms of getting obsessed about or obsessing about a particular thing. Now you're going to have to forgive me today. I've worked very, very hard and I'm incredibly tired, and I might just ramble and just spout out some stuff, and you're just going to have to take what you can from this. I'm not speaking from a position of a scientist. I'm not speaking from the position of a doctor or a theologian. I'm speaking from the position of a human being who's got some kind of perspective on humans as a result of being human and having dealt with a lot of humans. A lot of you people know I work over the internet and telephone, and what I do is I do tarot readings, and that's interesting for me because it puts me in a position of communicating with people who have lots of different perspectives, lots of different styles of life, personal histories and personal problems. And because of that, it does give me an insight into aspects of the human character and human personalities that I probably would not normally have if I was, let's say, like a normal counselor, or let's say I did a normal job. Okay, so I've got a different perspective. Obsessions, I feel, are things that everyone, or nearly everyone, probably has to a certain degree. If you think about the most basic common level of an obsession, we have an obsession with staying alive. That's why we eat every day. We have an obsession with staying alive. That's why we breathe every day. There's things which we are designed instinctively to want to do for our own survival, because we are a form of animal. We will want to obey certain tribal norms in order for us to survive in other ways, because the word survival doesn't just cover shelter, it doesn't just cover drinking water or eating, it covers everything. In order to survive these days, you've got to have knowledge, you've got to use the right buzzwords and use the right pop cultural references in order to be accepted within the group and to converse with people within the group. You've got to dress in a manner which is appropriate to a situation so that you can basically survive. People who don't behave in a manner which is right for a situation are often socially ostracized. And so our beings, our minds, the human condition is geared towards survival on lots of different levels. And I feel that humans find getting the right balance and the right perspective very difficult indeed, especially as you can get conflicting messages from your upbringing. You can possibly excessively remember some messages that you were given when you were a child in primary school, for instance, and carry that with you throughout your life, even to a time of life when that way of thinking is no longer required and it's inappropriate to think that way, because we look out for importance. So if you think about that, we've got survival, we've got importance. Alright, these are two concepts which make us want to obsess to the point whereby we think we are surviving. What else have we got? We've got status as well. That's another drive that we've got. We want to have our words and our opinions considered to be valuable. And so we obsess in other ways to try and make it so that we as human beings are taken seriously. So this is one of the reasons we try and work for status. Not just when you're going to a job interview and you're putting on the right style of suit for that particular job interview so you socially fit into that environment, and demonstrate the right social norms so you can suck up to the employer, which is basically what it's all about. But also the idea of getting the job so they can have status in society as being a respectable taxpayer rather than someone who's just scrounging off the states. That's another important thing for us that we need to have, to the most part. There's always some exceptions, okay? If you think about your family conflicts, and the person who inquired was referring to one particular family conflict, there's always that, you're younger, therefore you're not as important, I'm older, therefore I'm more important, or, I know more because I've been there, I've got the experience, therefore I'm the one you should be listening to. Yeah, but I've got a different perspective, so therefore my opinion counts as well. These are status battles. Why do we have status battles? It's because we're animals. This is what packs of wolves do. There's always like an alpha male in the pack of wolves who's the one who's always in charge and always gets the best females, and he's got to that level through basically fighting and being aggressive or doing what it needs in order to get that particular level of rank. But we don't have a culture in which the way that you get your rank is to snarl at somebody or to bite them in the neck. Okay, we don't have that. Okay, there's of course the rough pub culture, in which case you've got to be not only know all the cultural references, dress the right way, drink the right things, and all the rest of it to be in the scene. But yes, it pays to be a good fighter as well. Most people probably don't live in that kind of situation. All right, so you go out to a pub by all means, but just choose your pubs with great care. Okay. I mean, pubs is another example. The place where you drink has some kind of meaning associated with it. All right. In some parts of London, for instance, the logos that you wear would also have a meaning associated with the gangs that you're a part of. You see where I'm coming from here. So why do we obsess? It's because we're processing information. When our brains are processing information, we can get stuck. Rather like an old-fashioned vinyl record getting stuck in a groove, okay? Or your CD having a skip. You get one track of thought which you somehow think is important. Now that train of thought can get muddled or confused with other factors such as the emotion of anger, the desire for justice, basically the desire for self-preservation getting twisted out of shape. And for all of these reasons, we can develop obsessions. And also with some people, they can get obsessed with relationships. They can get obsessed either with sex, or they can get obsessed with something like falling in love, which is another great obsession of humanity. That's why romantic comedies are, quite so popular, because if people don't actually have it, they want to have the feeling of having it, and so they can watch a romantic comedy to substitute or fill in the gap. Now, if there's a situation in which you're arguing with a member of the family, that can have lots of different dimensions to it and lots of different layers. There's the aspect which is more to do with status and who's really in charge, who is the alpha individual. How can you protect your dignity if there's a conflict? What other conflicts in the past that you're still harboring inside you are connected to this one? What messages have you been given in your life, or that you've absorbed, whether it's from the media or your parents or your friends or your enemies, which has made you think that certain forms of behavior are appropriate and certain drives or means of dealing with conflict are correct? What in particular does the thing that you're arguing about actually mean to yourself in particular? And how does it relate to the social dynamic? And was there a time in your history when that thing that you were arguing over was connected to an argument of who was right and who was wrong? And was there a power play situation associated with that? Now, all of these things can create obsessions. Now, what you could be picking up from what I'm talking about right now is the intense complexity of what humans are. I mean, we are so complex. It is just difficult to describe in just a few minutes in a YouTube video. Alright, there's all kinds of drives which drive us. And to the most part, we don't always act in a manner which is based upon reason and reasoning. But we do it based upon all of these complex emotions and drives and the things which make us try and fight for status, to try and fight for love, to try and fight for that moment of thinking that, you know, we are right after all. And then there's all kinds of other dimensions as well, like smoking being an oral fixation thing, and drinking as well. And does that have a connection to your infancy and dealing with being weaned? You know, as Freud postulated. I think Freud said something along those things, I can't remember. You know, we are complex. I'm going to take this video and bring it back to one of the key things that I talk about, which is religious weird shit, basically. Okay, because that's what I talk about. This is what Nick Dutch is about to a degree, and how religion can actually be used beneficially. There are certain organizations here in the United Kingdom and also in the United States who actually use ideas from religion to be able to help people to overcome problems by way of inserting other ideas into the mind. Because obsessions are so powerful, it's worthwhile using other ideas which are equally powerful, such as repetition, as well as prayer, to be able to overcome an obsession. I don't know whether you've heard the Serenity prayer before. A lot of people take the piss out of it because it's written everywhere. It's written on greetings cards. It's in rehabilitation organizations and drying out centers and the rest of it. And it's everywhere. But it's also very important if you think about all of the words in their order. It goes something along the lines of, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now let's start from the top. Firstly, there's the word God. Do you actually have to believe in God to use the Serenity prayer? No, you don't under any circumstances. It can be anything. Indeed, your own higher self, your own higher conscience inside you, that becomes God, a higher power that you make up. The second bit, grant me the serenity, namely, please help me to calm the heck down. To accept the things I cannot change. Well, if there's something that you can't change, but you're thinking about it, that's an obsession. That's a variety of obsession. And acceptance is to be able to deal with the fact that it's there. The next bit, courage to change the things I can, which refers to priorities and getting your priorities right about how to deal with life. So you focus on being grateful for the fact you've got a roof over your head, you've got food in your belly, and all that kind of stuff. And you work on the things you can work on and not the things you can't work on. And the final bit, the wisdom to know the difference, that's plain and simple talking about learning when something is an obsession, when something is not an obsession, and learning how to calm down. Alright, because wisdom is not knowledge. Wisdom is perspective, or a perspective. So you build up your own wisdom, you build up your own perspective with time as to how to deal with these things. Alright? I actually use that quite a lot just to stop myself from flying off the handle about something that doesn't really matter. Why do I do that? Because I'm a human being. I obsess about things. We all do. You know, we're designed in such a complex manner. It's very difficult for us to calm down and just watch the sunset. But we obsess. If you've been on YouTube enough, you'll notice people who obsess with theism, atheism, Christianity, Judaism, Islam. People are obsessed about HHO devices. People are obsessed about flat earth theory, creationism, it's all out there. And all of these insanities that you see out there are perfectly rational to the people who have those obsessions, because they haven't learned to deal with them and develop perspective. And things such as the Serenity Prayer are there to help us to develop perspective so we don't fly off the handle. Another thing that's useful is meditation, which actually can change your brain ever so slightly. And if you do add religious exercises to it, as I mentioned in a previous video, it can change your perspective over time so you can become more compassionate to society. Alright, these are essentially neurological facts. And this is another reason why forms of religion or deism could actually be very important to a lot of people. Okay? So what I've covered so far is why people are obsessive, and that's because it's the way that we're made. We're humans, and humans are flawed, and humans suck in many different ways, but we still have tools which are available for us, which we can learn to apply in our life so that we can develop some perspective. And you can steal from religion without being religious. Now, you just take a few ideas and just work with them, or work with ideas relating to love, tranquility, acceptance. There's even a few sections in the New Testament. Now, I'm not a Christian by any means, but there's still a few sections in the New Testament that I read on a regular basis, because there's a mention in there of things which help me to minister, so to speak, to my own emotions when I've got an aggressive obsession about something, so I can put myself back into perspective, not necessarily in line with anybody else's line of thinking, but to allow myself to have my own line of thinking put back into me, basically. Just bring myself down to normality. So yeah, humans are complex, and we're pretty screwed up. All of us are, and we have to accept that. Not to embrace it. I think that to embrace your negative side is to bring you to the point whereby you could end up hurting somebody. I've got negative things in me. I've got some, I've got some feelings of resentment, bitterness, anger, anxiety, frustration, and these things do make me human. But do they help me to grow up and behave like someone who is a civilized member of society? No. They don't. These things hinder my ability to essentially be well integrated into society, to accept other people for their flaws, so I don't get into a rage-fueled, violent argument that could get really nasty. Which, these things happen. They can happen with your family, with your friends, they can happen with anyone. I don't know whether this is just me. I don't think it is just me, but sometimes you can be standing at a bus stop next to some guy, okay, and something inside your head will be saying, I wonder what would happen if I was to thump him. It can just happen there, just like something just pops into your head. It's all based upon all of this complex stuff about wanting to defend yourself or protect yourself that I've mentioned just a few moments ago. And we've got to deal with that, so you don't spontaneously do what your mind tells you to do and think about, well, let's see what happens if I thump him, and go to thump the person. This is essentially where we can actually use religion in an intelligent way without actually having to believe any of the horse shit that some people want to just throw into our minds. We can cherry pick the information which is useful for our survival. So you can change your mind, literally. You can reprogram yourself bit by bit over time. And you can use these things for your survival, to help you to overcome, deal with, or put in perspective your hatred, your resentment, your bitterness, your frustration, and all the rest of that. And I'll very quickly mention the other form of prayer, which is another thing that I do. It doesn't matter whether God exists or not. So to be honest, I don't really give a fuck, and I don't think He cares if I care whether He exists or not. And that is, you literally get on your knees. Literally. And you imagine for a couple of seconds in a day that this higher power, which could just be your, your superego, your upper consciousness, your frontal lobes, the more rational aspect of your being, and you ask it to take away from you the resentment, bitterness, anger, frustration, obsession, and the rest of it. And it doesn't matter whether God exists. It doesn't. At all. Just do the friendly exercise, and if you do it on your knees, it seems to have more of an effect upon your mind. And so it's another thing that you can steal from religion to assist you in your survival. And that's the way that I see it anyway.